Hi, I'm Sylvester, and this is one of those stories where at the time that it happened, it felt like it was a really big deal. But now looking back on it, I realize it's not as big of a deal as I thought it was back then. And I didn't have the language back then to articulate why this upset me so much, but now, hopefully, I do. So, let's get into it. To start off the story, I have to introduce you to some of the people involved. I'm not going to be using their real names, so I had this friend, and let's call him Shane. And then there was this guy that I had a crush on named Richard. Richard and Shane were friends. And then Richard had a friend named Mark. Mark had a crush on me, but I had a crush on Richard. And I was friends with Shane. So Shane and I were close enough that I felt like I could confide in him. I could tell him things that I didn't feel comfortable telling other people. Now, I'm the sort of person where it takes me a while to trust a person. It takes me a while to open up. It may not seem that way because I share a lot of myself on the internet, but in real life, it takes me a while to trust someone and to open up to them. And telling somebody who you have a crush on doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal, but to me, it was a bigger deal than I think a lot of people would find it to be because I had this semi traumatic incident happen when I was in kindergarten. I had this friend, I trusted her, I told her who I had a crush on, and then she immediately told the entire school, including the kid I had a crush on, and I was this fat, unpopular, ugly kid, and so everybody laughed at me for having a crush on this guy, and it was humiliating. And I was dumb enough to have this happen multiple times. I confided in her multiple times about who I had a crush on, and every single time she would use it against me and tell everybody who I had a crush on so that everyone could laugh at me, including the person who I had a crush on, and they'd often be like, ew, gross, and they'd be disgusted that I had a crush on them. And so, long story short, I didn't feel comfortable confiding in that many people who I had crushes on because I didn't want the person I had a crush on to find out in case they didn't have a crush on me. Then it would be, or if they didn't feel the way that I felt about them, then it would be kind of embarrassing, especially if all these people knew that I had this big crush on someone who didn't have a crush on me. It's just kind of embarrassing. So I opened up to Shane and I told him that I had a crush on Richard. And I'm pretty sure Shane told Richard that I had a crush on him. I'm pretty sure that Shane talked to Richard about this because I would often talk to Shane about how I liked Richard, and every single time Shane would try to set me up with Mark. Because, as I said, I'm pretty sure Mark had a crush on me, and I'm pretty sure Shane and Mark and Richard would talk to each other. Shane probably told them both that I had a crush on Richard. Mark probably told Shane that he had a crush on me, and then he and Shane kind of decided that they would try to set me up with Mark. And this really upset me because I want to be involved in the decisions in my life that affect me. Like, I want to have agency in my life. I don't want other people making big decisions for me, like who I'm going to end up dating. So every single time I would bring up Richard and talk about how I had a crush on Richard, Shane would try to talk up Mark and be like, oh, but isn't Mark so cute? Isn't Mark so nice? And he'd try to get me to like Mark. And I tried to make it as clear as possible that I didn't have a crush on Mark, I had a crush on Richard. And I didn't want what seemed to be a consolation prize. It was insulting to me because, again, it seemed like they were offering me Mark as a consolation prize. Like, well, Richard doesn't like you, but it's okay, you can have Mark. And I didn't want Mark, I wanted Richard. So, on top of this, I was hanging out with Richard every now and then. Like, we had like a casual friendship with Richard, and Richard would always talk about his girlfriend. Every time we were together, he would just like talk about my girlfriend this, my girlfriend that. And to me, he was making it really, really clear that he didn't want to be with me because he was talking about how he had a girlfriend so much, which is kind of code. You know, when you're around somebody who you know has a crush on you and you're trying to make it obvious that you don't want to be with them, like saying that you're in a relationship is one of the best ways to get somebody to stop creeping on you, right? So I felt like betrayed. Like Shane had told Richard that I had a crush on him, and now Richard was acting aggressively, like like I was being some creep who had this like he knew that I had a crush on him, and he was creeped out by that and was trying to keep me at arm's length, like, oh, but I have a girlfriend, I have a girlfriend. And it's like I wasn't trying to be creepy. I wasn't trying to hit on Richard. In fact, I don't think I ever did anything while I was around Richard that maybe that would send the signal that I wanted to be with him. We just hung out as friends. But again, Richard wanted to make it very, very obvious that he didn't want to be with me, which hurt my feelings. But then one day I'm hanging out with Richard and he turns to me and he's like, you should have more confidence. And the thing is, you know how sometimes people say one thing but they mean something else? He was saying I should have more confidence, but it seemed to me like what he was trying to say is, if you have a crush on me, you should make the first move. And it's like, bro, I don't want to make, like, if you're constantly talking about your girlfriend, I'm not going to make a move because you're clearly in a relationship, and people talking about how they have a girlfriend is, again, a signal that they don't want to date you. So I was getting these mixed signals all of a sudden. It's like, wait a minute, was he just bringing up his girlfriend because he's playing hard to get? Like, does he want me to try to take him away from his girlfriend? Because every time I talked to Shane, he told me that he'd broken up with his girlfriend. And Shane, even though Shane was trying to set me up with Mark, Shane would say that Richard and his girlfriend had broken up and that I should try to make a move. And so I was getting, again, some very mixed signals. Like, Shane was clearly trying to set me up with Mark. Mark clearly had a crush on me. But at the same time, Shane was telling me that I should try to make a move on Richard. And Richard was constantly talking about how he had a girlfriend, even though allegedly he did not have a girlfriend. And then he shames me for not trying to make a move on him, which is like, wait, again, I'm getting mixed signals here. Are you trying to set me up with Richard, or are you trying to set me up with Shane? Are you trying to tell me that Richard doesn't want me, or are you trying to tell me that I should be more aggressive with Richard? Because that would be so embarrassing if I tried to make a move on Richard, and then he's like, bro, I have a girlfriend, what are you doing? Like, that would be humiliating. So obviously, if this guy is talking about how he has a girlfriend, I am not going to try to make a move on him, because it seems to me like talking about having a girlfriend is his way of telling me he's not interested. But what if it's not? What if he's just trying to play hard to get and he wants me to make a move anyways? But again, I would never do that, because if somebody's in a relationship, I respect that relationship enough to not try to break them up. So it was just very confusing. And I just didn't know what people wanted from me. And then at one point, Shane went on not on vacation. Shane had a surgery, and he was out of town for a week, and he asked me to take care of his cats. So I go over to Shane's house to take care of his cats, to feed them, and I walk in, and Mark's there. And I'm like, okay, Shane never told me that Mark was also invited here to take care of his cats. Shane didn't tell me that Mark was going to be here. So in my head, it seemed like they were trying to set me up, like Shane was trying to set me up with Mark again. Like, I'd walk in and it'd be like, oh, wow, look, we both were told to take care of this guy's cats, wow. And then we'd like laugh and hit it off and start talking, and it'd be like a romance movie. But I had already told Shane many times that I wasn't interested in Mark, so this felt insulting to me, because it's like, you're clearly not listening to what I have to say. I say no, I say I'm not interested in this guy, and you try to hook me up with him anyways. Again, I want to have agency in my life. I want to decide who I end up with, and if I tell you I don't want to be with this guy, don't try to force me to be with this guy. And it made me seem like an asshole, because I knew that Mark had a crush on me based on how aggressively Shane was trying to get me to date him. And I was being the one who's rejecting him, and I didn't want to be the asshole who rejects somebody. But at the same time, I told Shane that I didn't want to be with Mark. I told Shane that I wanted to be with Richard. So yeah, that ended up, like, I got really mad at Shane at the time. I got really mad because I felt really betrayed. Like, I told you so many times, I don't want to date this guy. Why would you try to set me up with him? Why would you do this? But then Shane was doing the whole thing where it's like, oh, it's an accident. I forgot that I also asked Mark to take care of my cats. It's like, that's a big thing to forget about. Like, you gave 2 people spare keys to your apartment, and you just forget that, like, I don't know, I'm not buying it, you know what I mean? He's like, it was an accident, so I couldn't get mad at him because it was just an accident. He didn't mean for Mark and I to both be in the same apartment at the same time, which, again, telling this in hindsight, it doesn't sound like it's that big of a deal, and it really wasn't that big of a deal. But at the time, I felt really betrayed by Shane because he was supposed to be my friend, and he was over here trying to set me up with Mark, even though I told him I wasn't interested in Mark. And then that makes me the asshole who's gets mad and rejects Mark. Like, I didn't get mad at Mark. I got mad at Shane, and then I look like an asshole for getting mad at Shane, even though at the time it felt justified getting angry at him because I felt like he just wasn't listening to me and wasn't respecting what I had to say. Anyway, that's the whole story. To suffice it to say, I didn't end up with Shane, or sorry, I didn't end up with Richard or Mark. And this whole situation was just really embarrassing to me because I felt like the whole world knew I had this big crush on Richard, and Richard either really wasn't interested or he wanted me to make a move, but I like maybe he didn't. I don't know. I still to this day have no idea what Richard was trying to say. Like, did Richard want me to make a move on him? Or was he aggressively trying to tell me that he wasn't interested? Because I don't know, he kept hanging out with me. Even though he knew I had a crush on him, he kept hanging out with me, but then every time we'd hang out, he'd talk about his girlfriend. So, like, I don't know. I have no idea. Was this guy trying to play hard to get, or was he trying to let me know that he wasn't interested? I have no idea. All I know is that I felt like an asshole for rejecting Mark because that situation was completely unnecessary. Like, when I walked in to Shane's house and Mark was there, I was like, I had to be super awkward and be like, okay, I'm gonna leave, bye. Even though Mark really clearly wanted to hang out with me, it's like I didn't want to hang out with him because he and I just didn't have personalities that we just didn't mesh. Like, I got along better with Richard. Richard's personality, he was very chill, but also very, like, personable and really friendly, and like, Mark was a nice guy and all, but he was just really, really, really shy. And I am a pretty shy person myself, so us hanging out would have been a disaster because we're both just incredibly shy people who would just be, like, not knowing what to talk about the entire time because we're both just very shy. So... So, like, I had to awkwardly leave and be like, "Hey, Mark, bye," even though I know he wanted to hang out, and then I felt like the jerk. But that was completely unnecessary. If Shane had not tried to set us up, then that would have never happened, and I would have never been made to feel like an asshole, and I wouldn't have had to have rejected Mark to his face. So, anyway, I was really upset with Shane. That's the whole story. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Stay frosty. Bye.